This is the race course that I'm using to compete in RaceGow, a tiny whoop racing event. But this video isn't about RaceGow. See, I've been posting videos about RaceGow on my channel, and you guys keep asking me to tell you more about these little guys. These are FPV racing lap timers, and they are so important to getting faster as a racer. Like, normally what people do with RaceGow is you record your DVR, and then after you fly, you go and you look at your DVR and you use the DVR to time your laps. And then you find your fastest laps and you submit them. But like, have you ever been trying to get faster and you're grinding out laps and you're trying as hard as you can to go as fast as you can, and you have no idea how fast you're going until you finish, you offload your DVR, you replay it, and then you find out, oh, maybe you were just about to set the fastest lap you've ever set and you didn't know it. That's why having a lap timer to give you real-time feedback is so freaking important to going fast. And I've showed you in previous videos how to build one of these lap timers, but what I haven't done is show you how to actually freaking set it up and use it to time your laps. That's what we're doing in this video. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're gonna learn something today. The first thing I want to do in this video is make sure you understand how this lap timer actually knows when you have passed through the gate, how it actually times your laps. Because if you don't understand that, then you're going to get a lot of false reads. It's either going to miss a lap that you went through, or more likely when you have really small courses like this tiny whoop course, it's going to read a bunch of false laps thinking you went through the gate when you didn't really do it. So what we've got here, I've placed the lap timer at the start-finish gate, okay? And what it's gonna do is it is going to detect your video transmitter signal. So this is listening. It can actually listen on 8 channels at a time, so it's set up for big races. You can also get smaller ones like that little green one that I had earlier that only do 1 or 2 channels at a time, more useful for practice. It's listening on the channel, and when it detects your video transmitter come past it, it sees the strength of the video transmitter rise and peak and fall, and that's how it knows you've passed through the gate. And your first thought might be, well, how accurate could that really be? And it turns out that with like some smarts and some calculation, it can be accurate down to tenths or even hundredths of a second. That's the standard for how lap timing is done for basically all FPV races around the world. But getting it to detect the laps accurately, that's a little trickier. So here on my phone, I have logged into the lap timer. You do it with a web browser, your phone, laptop, anything with a browser. You just log in and you get access to the full capabilities of the lap timer. And the screen that we're looking at is the calibration screen for this timing node. So let me just plug this quadcopter in and we should see a result. Oh, there we go. It has powered up and now we are reading some output power from this video transmitter. And in fact, if I go further away, we should see that output power drop. And if I come closer, we should see that output power go up. That's essentially what the lap timer does. So how does it know when you've passed a lap? Well, there are 2 numbers that it uses to determine when you have passed through the gate and started a new lap. And the first is the enter at number, and that number is used to start what's called a crossing. A crossing is the process of you flying into and out of the gate. There's the enter at number, which starts the crossing, and the leave at number, which ends the crossing. And when the signal strength exceeds the enter at number, and then after that drops below the leave at number, that is one crossing. And calibrating those numbers correctly is key to getting accurate lap timing. So as a general guideline, what we're gonna do is place the quadcopter a few feet in front of the start-finish gate, and I will just tap the capture button next to the enter at value, and that will read the current signal strength and fill it in. And then we'll move to just a little bit past the start-finish gate, and I will capture the EXITAT number, and you would think that would be all there is to it, but it turns out it's usually not that simple. However, if we just play with this, we should be able to get some crossings, some laps to be read. There's one lap, and here we go. Oh, you see we missed that lap. It didn't quite get strong enough to pass the enter at threshold. So there's a little bit of playing around you have to do here. Like notice that if I'm up high, there can be a fair difference in signal strength versus if I'm down low. So we're going to need to kind of tweak that number, and fortunately we can just click and drag on the screen, and like if I want to lower it from 144 down a little bit, I can just click and drag and lower it down a little bit, and I can continue to tweak those numbers to try to get accurate reads. But there's something else going on here that is hurting my ability to get accurate reads. And you'll notice it, like right here, do you see that even though I've got the quadcopter out here, I've still triggered the threshold to start a new lap. Like if I were to come around here and out here and back through here, boom. As I cross here, it's gonna trigger a new lap, even though I didn't pass through the gate. And the reason for that is that there is no directionality to this antenna. This antenna is just sitting here, and whenever anything gets within range of it, it's going to trigger. Doesn't matter what side it's coming from. So how do we solve that problem? This is how we solve that problem. A bucket. Because a metal bucket specifically. Because if we take the lap timer and we put it inside the metal bucket, that will shield the lap timer from signals coming from other directions. Some people use a bucket, some people use a metal ammo can. Anything metal that will shield it from one direction, well, all directions except for one direction, will help. So I'm just gonna drop the lap timer, no kidding, drop it inside this bucket, and let's think about the best way to place it. When you think about the best way to place it, you're gonna need to think about the laps, the course, right? You're gonna wanna place it in such a way that it only sees the signal from the quad as the quad is coming around to start a new lap. So for example, with this particular course, you fly through here, you do some flying around here-ish, and then you come around the backside on that side of the course and back around to start a new lap. So we want to point it away from all this nonsense and towards this corner, which I'm only going to be coming around this corner as I'm finishing a lap. By the way, if you're not whoop racing, if you're like flying or in a big open field with big multi-GP gates, or God forbid you're flying freedom class with just a giant track, this is less of an issue. Like the gates may be far enough apart that you don't get any false reads if you just set the lap timer right near the gate and walk away. So it just depends. For whoop racing like this and indoor environments where the signal is bouncing around a lot and coming from crazy directions, those are the hardest ones to get accurate timing for. So I'm gonna take and I'm gonna place this like here, facing that way, and then we're just gonna see how it works. Okay, we've powered up. So I'm gonna start the lap when the quad is right about here, dead in front of the timer, where the signal is the strongest. And I can actually just look at the timer on screen and I can see what the signal strength is. And in fact, there's some difference. See how it's dropping down way low as I get higher? I could actually do this even better by tilting it up a little bit. And that's gonna help. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so like, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna capture my enter threshold there. That's gonna be when we're gonna detect the beginning of a lap change. And then my exit threshold, the key with the exit threshold is it needs to be significantly lower than the enter threshold, because a lot of times as you're sort of in this range, the signal's going like this, and you don't want that to trigger 1 lap, 2 lap, 3 lap, 4 lap, a bunch of false reads. So you want the exit threshold to be when you have definitely sort of cleared the frickin' gate and you've gone on about your way. So with this course, we're gonna fly straight through here and straight back there. So the exit threshold could be like way back here, like significantly lower, and that will help prevent false reads. So we'll capture the exit threshold. And now I should be set up in such a way that I can fly through the whole course without getting any false reads. So I'm just gonna test that by hand rather than actually flying it, so I can just quickly tweak. This is why the whoop racing is easier to set up, because if I had to fly the whole course with a 5-inch, I'd have to be a little harder to tweak the settings. So we will come around the left side, crossing. We have crossed the enter threshold, not by much. It's pretty close. Maybe you want to lower that enter threshold just a smidge. It just barely got there. So let's take it down from 145 to like 142, okay? All right, let's try again. Crossing, good. We got in there, and then through, and exit. Okay, great. And now we should not get any reads as we fly around this area. And you see, we are nowhere near the enter threshold. Even if we come over here, right, we are nowhere near the enter threshold. We are only going to trigger that enter threshold as we come around here. Boom, got it. Then we come around and exit. Okay, great. That's looking really good. In fact, it seems like we could lower that enter threshold even just a little more. That seems to be working. What if we're up high? Just barely got it if we're up high. What if we're coming up high? Just barely getting it. Maybe lower it just a little more. Because we have aimed and aligned the sensor correctly, we have a lot of latitude. We don't have to be very precise with the enter threshold because there's nowhere else on the course that we're getting anywhere close to that enter threshold. This bucket is a freaking lifesaver. And I do want to say, I've seen people on the internet say that the bucket doesn't do anything. They are clearly wrong. Like, look, I am right behind this sensor and we're nowhere near the enter threshold. If that bucket wasn't there, like you saw, we'd be triggering it. The bucket's a freaking lifesaver. At this point, a few of the people who are watching this are going to be lucky enough that all you have to do is take your lap timer, plug a battery into it, take it out to your start-finish gate, set it on the ground, and you're ready to go. You can access this lap timer via Wi-Fi. It actually has built-in Wi-Fi, so you don't even need to plug in an Ethernet cable or do anything fancy. But for a lot of people, that's not going to work. And one of the reasons is, as I said, in a lot of cases, especially with tighter courses, indoor courses, and tiny whoop racing, you're going to have to put the lap timer in a bucket to get it to time accurately. And once it goes in the bucket, you don't have Wi-Fi anymore. But even if you're not using a bucket, what we find is that in races where there's lots of pilots in the air, everybody's transmitting 2.4 gigahertz express LRS, 5 gigahertz video, a lot of times Wi-Fi just gets clobbered and it's just not reliable enough to use. So most people who are using a timer like this are going to end up plugging in an Ethernet cable. And you can go out and you can buy like a 50-foot or 100-foot Ethernet cable, just depending on how far away from your pilot station the start-finish gate is going to be. You're going to go get an Ethernet cable and you're going to put it in the bucket, and then what? There are a few other little accessories you're going to want to pick up to make your life easier and make your system work as good as possible. And that's what we're going to go into in this section of the video. So the first quality of life improvement you're going to get for your lap timer is an Ethernet cable, as I said. And by the way, that is one reason why a little standalone timer like this RotorHazard Atom isn't going to be ideal for everybody, because this guy doesn't have an Ethernet jack. And so this is not going to work very well if you have to put it in a bucket. You're going to lose Wi-Fi. It's not going to work very well if you're at a larger event. Well, it's not made for that. It's made for just self-timing practice. But unless you're just going to take this, set it on the ground in front of the gate, walk a few feet away, and use it just like that, this little standalone event device is not really going to work the best for you. You're going to want a full-fledged device made with a Raspberry Pi with an Ethernet jack. Now at that point, you can plug the other end of the Ethernet cable into your laptop if your laptop has an Ethernet adapter, and then you can access it directly that way. But a lot of people, they're going to be doing it from their phone, or they don't want to be tethered to their to the Ethernet cable. So another thing you can get is a little standalone Wi-Fi router like this. I'll put a link in the video description to all the stuff I'm describing, including this specific router. It's actually a pretty cool little device. But you'll plug this in, and then it will broadcast a Wi-Fi network that your phone or laptop connects to. But the difference is that instead of this being 50 feet away, out in a field inside a bucket, this little guy is right there in the pilot stand next to you, and so it's so close that you can get signal even in a noisy race environment. This is the standard way that I use it. One end is plugged into the RotorHazard, one end is plugged into here, and then this broadcasts the Wi-Fi network, and that's what I use to manage the RotorHazard lap timer. The final piece of the puzzle is power. Like, how do you power the lap timer? And of course, a simple way to do it is just to plug a battery in and stuff it all in the bucket and walk away. But there are a couple reasons this isn't ideal. One of them is that RotorHazard doesn't have any built-in voltage monitoring. It will just run this battery all the way down to dead, and then kill it, and then you've wasted an expensive battery. And in case you're thinking, well, I'll just go check the battery with a cell checker every now and then. No, you won't. You're gonna set it down in the field, you're gonna be racing, you're not gonna be thinking about it, and you're gonna kill the battery. So what a lot of people do is they pick up these. These little devices are passive inline Ethernet power injectors. Basically, you plug an Ethernet cable in here, and you plug a power adapter into this DC power jack. And then on the other end, you plug the Ethernet cable in here, and you plug this end into your peripheral. So you can see I've got a DC to XT60, and what I do is I plug the Ethernet into the RotorHazard, and then I plug the XT60 into the RotorHazard, and then this Ethernet cable carries both power and data from just a regular DC, like you could use a battery, you could use whatever plugs in here comes out there, and that's a great way to do it. Again, I'll put links in the video description if you want to pick this stuff up. This is how I think most serious race organizers do it, and it's super convenient because all you have to do is plug your RotorHazard in, boom, now it's got power and data, stuff it in a bucket, take it out to the gate, set it down, and never think about it again. Okay, that's how you set up the track and how you physically locate and power the timer. But how do you actually work with the software to make it time your races? That's what we're going to get into next, just as soon as I tell you about my Patreon. Patreon is a website where you can subscribe to me for as little as $2 a month, or more if you feel like I've earned it. The amount that you subscribe at is totally up to you. Think about how much value you get out of my content. Think about entertainment, education, problem solving, maybe product reviews I've done that helped you pick a good product or avoid a bad product. Think about how much that's worth to you. If it's worth at least $2 a month, then I'd love to have you subscribe. Down in the video description, there's a link to my Patreon. My goal in making these videos is to earn your support. And the most basic form of support is you coming back to watch the videos, and you're doing that, and I really appreciate it. But eventually, I hope to get to a point that it actually is worth a couple bucks a month to you, or maybe more. And when that day comes, that link is there. And if that day hasn't come yet, I'm not going to mention it again until the next video. But maybe that day will come. Next, we're going to configure the RotorHazard timer to actually time our races. And I want to be really clear that the RotorHazard timer has a lot of functionality that is used for running like a large event that we're not going to touch on here. Things like generating brackets and assigning pilots to frequencies and taking the results of like one bracket and reassigning the winners of the brackets to the next bracket up in the ladder. We're not going to do any of that. We're going to focus on the things that I've actually done and actually feel qualified to tell you about, which is using the RotorHazard timer for just timing practices. And maybe someday we'll do a more detailed. Frankly, to be honest with you, the people who actually run races use different software to run the races. The most popular one that I'm seeing now is called FPV Trackside. It's amazing, and it still uses the RotorHazard timer as the actual physical timer, but the event management is done by the Trackside software, which is superior. But RotorHazard is what we've got, and it is nice that it is completely self-contained in the timer, and that's what we're going to, it's great for practicing. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to start by just plugging the RotorHazard timer into our computer network or connecting to the RotorHazard Wi-Fi. This will be something that you set up when you initially set up the timer. We're not going to go into that in this video. We generally access the timer by going to rotorhazard.local in your web browser, or if you know the IP address, you can go to the IP address. Then what we need to do is go to Format. And here is where we're going to set up race formats. And what I like to do for practice, well, it depends on what you're practicing for. Is it best single lap? Is it best 3 laps? What I've been working on lately is the fastest consecutive laps qualifier, which is the fastest 3 laps is what we're going for in the RaceGow competition. So, but the fastest consecutive laps qualifier, there are some things about it that I want to change. And rather than change the default, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a copy of it by clicking plus and duplicate format, and we can change that name to whatever we want. Maybe we'll do that later. And what I want to change is the race clock mode. See, by default, you will have a 3-minute qualifier heat, and then at the end of that, everybody leaves, and then the next group of pilots come up. But for practice, we don't want limited time. We want the clock to just run until we get done practicing. So we're going to change the race clock mode from fixed time to no time limit. And then fastest consecutive laps is our win condition. Points assignment doesn't matter. Team racing doesn't matter. All of this stuff is fine. And we'll just rename this fastest consecutive laps qualifier unlimited time. Okay, great. That is done. I don't even think there's a save button. Then I'm going to go to pilots, and we're going to add pilots. And we're going to do this for every pilot who is actually in this practice session. So I'll click Add Pilot. I'll put the name, Joshua Bardwell. I'll put the call sign, JB, and we'll just check. Can we read this out?
JB.
There we go. You can test that it reads it out correctly. If it's not reading it out correctly, you can put a phonetic spelling.
Justin Bieber.
We got that right.
Justin Bieber.
You can play with the pronunciation of the name if it's not pronouncing it correctly. So we'll add pilots, and then after we've added the pilots, we will go to classes and heats, and we will add an unclassified heat, and we're going to put the pilot on a certain channel. Now you're going to notice here that I have 8 sensors, but most of the sensors are turned off. Let's actually go take care of that. If we go to settings and frequency setup, notice that I've got most of my timing nodes disabled because I'm the only one who is flying. For every pilot and every channel that is flying simultaneously, you need a separate node. So if we had 2 pilots, we might take one node and put it on race 1 and one node and put it on race 8. We split the pilots up, we assign them to channels, and we're good to go. I like to disable the nodes that I'm not using because they take up space in the UI, and especially if you're on mobile, having 8 nodes just taking up space that you're not using makes the screen really cluttered. You don't have to do it, but I like to do it. So I've got node 8 active. It's on race 8. It doesn't have to be that way. Any node can be on race 8. Any node can be on any channel, but just in my mind, having node 8 be race 8 kind of clicked. And then we'll go to Format, Classes and Heats, and we'll assign pilots to channels. This is the kind of thing that could automatically be done if you were running a big event. And it could say, here are the heats that the pilots are going to be in. Here's the channels that they're going to be on. But for practice, we're just going to do it manually. So now we've got a heat, practice heat, we could call it, whatever we want to call it. And then we're almost ready. After that, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Run and run the event. And we're going to change the mode here to... Yes, we're going to make sure that fastest consecutive laps unlimited time is our mode, and we're going to change from practice mode to practice heat. Oh, you know what? It actually doesn't make sense to name it JB practice. Let's name it something like JB on R8, right? That's what this heat is actually defining. Okay, run. JB on race 8 is the heat. Our format is fastest consecutive laps unlimited time. There is one other thing we need to change. It is the minimum lap time. You're going to need to change the minimum lap time based on the shortest lap that you think you're going to possibly get. And then if there is a false read that is shorter than that, you'll be able to tell that that wasn't valid. For me, if I'm getting like 12 or 11 seconds on the course, I set the minimum lap time a little bit less than that because who knows, my time could get better. I've got it set to 8 seconds, and then for the minimum lap behavior, you can even have it highlight the short laps and you can manually delete them, or you can just discard the laps. And in my experience, it's seldom this is pretty reliable. If there's a lap that's shorter than that, it's not a valid lap, it's a false read, and we'll discard the laps. There's one other thing I know I need to change, and I got to find it. There we go. It's under Format and Event. It's the consecutive laps base. And that is the number of consecutive laps that you're trying to get in your timing. So for RaceGow, the timing is fastest 3 consecutive laps. But if you were doing an event where you were trying to qualify 2 consecutive laps or something, you would change that number there. But we don't need to change that because the default is correct. Now we are ready to start our race. Before we do that though, we're going to go to audio control and we're going to make sure that a voice is selected. You can pick any of the voices. The voices that are available depend on your operating system. So if you're on your phone, you'll see, well, in my case, in my experience, you see fewer available voices. If you're on desktop, there can be just a ton of voices and you can pick whichever one of these ones you like. We'll go with good old Microsoft David. If we want to test that, we can go to, I believe it's settings, audio control, and we can do a voice test.
RotorHazard.
And we can have it read. Oh, Microsoft David is so depressing.
RotorHazard.
That's okay. You know what? Let's make it English.
RotorHazard.
Ooh. So once you've got the audio working correctly, the other thing I like to do is enable a beep for crossing entered. And you'll see what happens. You'll see what that works like when I start the event, but it'll beep when you enter the start finish gate. And that lets you know for a fact that it caught your lap. Okay. So then we'll go to run. We're almost ready to start the race. We will, oh yeah, we're ready. We'll start the race. Okay. And we're off. Now, at this point, I can begin racing. There's one lap. Well, actually, that's not a lap. I just entered the very first time. I got the whole shot and...
JB, lap 1, 10.9.
There we go. And away we go. Oh, here I come. Whee!
JB, lap 2, 10.7.
Okay, now you've finished your pack. What then? Well, of course, you could just plug another pack in and keep going. But in my experience, that gets a little bit unwieldy. You'll end up with 20 or 30 laps, and it can be a little difficult to like suss out, oh, wait, what pack was that? Was that good laps? Were they, et cetera, et cetera? So the first thing I'm going to do is, well, I can look through here and look for any like false reads or missed laps or something like that, and I can click this X to delete them. Once I'm happy with the data that I've got here, I can hit stop race, and then either I can hit save and clear, which will save these laps, save this heat to the timer's memory, and start a new one, clear it. Or if this whole pack was just garbage, like I can just hit discard laps and throw these laps out, and like if I'm trying to beat my best time and I didn't do it, well then I'll just throw it out and I'll just go on to the next one. But we're going to hit save and clear because I want to show you one more thing you can do. So now we're queued up. We're ready for the next one. I could start race. I could start my next pack and do another pack. And I'll usually just run one pack and stop the race. If I'm really grinding packs, then I might do more than one. But I'll just stop and start a new race for convenience sakes. And then what I can do is I can go to Marshall. And Marshall lets you look at your previous laps. And so good. It even recorded the deleted laps, but it automatically deleted them. That's cool. What I can do here is I can modify not just the laps, like I could delete laps or I could add a lap. If I'm like, oh wait, there was a crossing here that was missed, I could manually add a lap, like by clicking add lap right here, see? Even better. If I look at this and I go, you know what, my threshold wasn't right, I can retroactively change the thresholds, see, so that we change which lap times and crossings are detected. And like if I had this a little too high, like let's say I had this a little too high and it missed this lap here, I can just come back and I can drag that down and now I see bump, 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 bump. Oh, was this one? Should that have been a lap? I don't know. I can manually change this and I can tweak it. And then when I'm done, I can say commit changes. And then I will need to manually delete the short laps. There we go. Delete the short laps. And now everything is right. We can say clean deleted laps and commit changes. And we've saved that data. When I'm done, I can go to results. And I can click on heats and look at the results for all of the heats that I ran. I can see the total time, the average lap time, the fastest lap time, and the fastest consecutive, depending on the format that I have set up. And if I had run more than one round, I would have multiple events here. I could scroll down through. Lastly, I want to show you that we can go to Format, Data Management, and this is where we can clear out races, like you've finished for the week, you've exported your data, you've screenshotted everything you want to screenshot, whatever, when it's all said and done, we can clear the races, and then when we go to results or Marshall, there won't be any race data there. We can also, if we've like finished a race, we can clear out the racers, the heats, etc. We can clear all that stuff out depending on what we want to do. If you've watched this video all the way to the end, there's a fair chance that you already own RotorHazard Lap Timer and you're just looking to learn how to use it. But I'll bet a lot of people watching this don't have a lap timer at all, and you're just interested in seeing what they can do. If you now want to get a RotorHazard lap timer just like mine, I'm going to put a link in the video description and a card on screen to my tutorial for how to build the NUCLEARHAZARD RotorHazard lap timer. It is the cheapest and easiest way to get a full 8-channel lap timer that you can use for any event with pretty much any number of pilots. On the other hand, if you're looking for something simpler, there's another lap timer called the FPVSIM LAP TIMER that is even less expensive. It's a little less functional, but it might be right for you. And I'm going to put a link to that also on screen. I've got videos about both and in the video description below. I'll see you there.